What do we mean by success though? Because success is different for everybody, isn't it? We all have a different idea as to what success is going to look like for us. Now, in the chat box, what I'd really like for you to do is I'm going to share with you some examples of AVM members that had a vision and they've achieved that vision. I'm going to share with you what they were, and just tell me in the chat box which most closely represents the kind of practice and therefore lifestyle that will give you that you would love to achieve yourself. So as I say, it's either A, B or C. So Phil was at 50k GRF and he'd been stuck there. He'd kind of hit a glass ceiling. He was working silly hours, not really able to pay his mortgage because he'd moved from full-time employment to setting up his practice. He'd got bills that were far more than he was actually earning, that he was struggling to pay. But he set his target on, and he almost said it as a joke, on £1 million practice on a 3-day week. Within 4 years, he achieved his £1 million practice working a 3-day week. And since then, he's continued to grow that massively still as well. Absolutely loving what he's doing. Paul, a little bit more of an extreme. He started his journey a little bit higher in terms of revenue. He'd recently bought out the shares from other partners, took on a mammoth amount of clients, all wanting and demanding his time. Also hit this glass ceiling, working silly hours and actually not profitable because of the large team of people they got. And again, within just a relatively short time, he got on a journey where he was achieving his empire, and that has continued to develop. And I use that word empire deliberately because he's set up several offices now. They're all running incredibly effectively. And only recently have those two started with acquisitions, by the way. They achieved that level of success without them. And then finally, Jane, she was in practice already, fairly established. But actually it wasn't working for her. She'd got a team of people, she'd got 200 odd clients, she was still working silly hours and not generating a decent income for herself. And so what she did was what you might consider the opposite. She actually reduced her turnover in just 7 months, reduced the number of clients that she was working with, but actually intensified, enhanced the level of service she was giving to those clients. Much more profitable, delivering advisory services, outsourcing the compliance. No longer does she have a team, working a 3-day week herself and earning 100k in personal income. So which, A, B or C, or maybe it's something else, put it in the chat box, might most closely represent the kind of practice that you would love to establish for yourself? So I'm looking that way because that's where my chat box is, on a different screen. So it's A for you, Phil. It's C for you, Carl. Keep them coming in. That's not very many. So C. Yeah, and to be fair, many, I see there's a few Bs, there's a few As in there. We're all different, aren't we? And this is only going to be close. We all have different ideas as to what we really, really want to achieve, don't we? For some of us, it is just about working less hours. Yes, getting a decent, much more rewarding income and maybe doing the type of stuff that we really enjoy. Some people want to build an empire. I mean, you can argue Phil and Paul's are pretty much the same now. They're continuing to build a massive empire. Okay, so thank you for that. Giving me a really good idea. Now look, in this session, this is what I'm going to be covering. I'm going to share with you why most accountants aren't seeing the level of success that they'd really like to be, and why they absolutely won't unless they make a fundamental change. But I also want to inspire that you can create your dream practice that's giving you your dream lifestyle outside of it. However many hours a week you want to be working, the holidays that you want to be taking, the stuff that you'd love to be doing outside of running the practice that perhaps you're not getting the opportunity to do enough of right now. I'm going to share with you 3 steps of our exclusive proven blueprint to a successful practice. And I'm going to be sharing with you some takeaway actions along the way as well. So make sure you've got your pen and notepads ready. And I also want to share with you why attending the masterclass will transform your practice and your life. Okay. So do I have your full undivided attention for the next night? It says 55 minutes. I'm going to make sure it's 49 minutes. That's what we've got left. In fact, 48. So just give us a I commit in the chat box that you're not going to make me background noise. You're going to have your phones on do not disturb, and you're going to give me your undivided attention. Can I see an I commit in the chat box, please? Thank you very much for that. That's lots of commitment in there. That's fantastic. Okay, wonderful stuff. Now, is it okay? Normally on these Thursday sessions I have a rule, and I'm sure many of you regular attendees must be aware of this. I have a rule that I get amazing speakers coming in and giving you their value, but they are not allowed to pitch. They are only allowed to share contact details. But would it be okay if I share with you enough value today that you can see the benefits of coming along to Masterclass, that I make you a great offer today? Would that be okay? Give us a yes or no in the chat box, please. And then that's probably it for the chat box for a while. Okay, because I am breaking my own rule here by effectively making you an offer today. But look, you know, I am so passionate about what we do. I know that we make a profound difference to accountants, and I really want to make this available to as many people as possible. So lots of yeses coming up in the chat box. Not seeing a no, so on that basis I'm going to continue. So thank you very much for that. So let me begin. Why most accountants aren't the level of success that they'd really like to be. Why on earth is that? Now, to some extent, it does start from the very beginning of our journey in life, really. So we're going to have a This Is Your Life moment, and we're going to take a look at, well, what are the things that have stopped us? Because right from birth, you know, once upon a time you were born, you were a beautiful little baby without a doubt. As you grew up, perhaps you used to take risks and do things that just these days you just don't do anymore. Okay? Perhaps you used to daydream about stuff you'd love to be when you got older. Perhaps you wanted to be an astronaut or a doctor or maybe the next prime minister or whatever it might have been, perhaps even an accountant. You went to school, and at some point along that journey through school, a lot of those aspirations that perhaps you once upon a time had were gradually extinguished, and you started to settle in on just one of those career options going forward. And perhaps along the way you met the love of your life as well. But certainly at some point you made the decision, do you know what, I really want to own my own accounting business. Now, whether that was going in as a partnership, or whether that was setting up on your own or just taking over, ultimately you made that decision. And when you made that decision, you would have decided, do you know what, this is going to be my business. I'm going to run it on my terms. I want to take the holidays I want to. I want to work the hours I want to. I'm going to earn much more money because it's my business. And you would have decided that this sort of capacity of your life, you're going to allow a certain amount of that time to run in your accountancy practice, but ultimately much more time spending with my family, with my friends, and on my health, pursuing hobbies and activities and interests that I'd really like to be doing. But sadly, over time, the needs of the practice have started to dominate much more of your life. Give us a yes or no in the chat box if you can relate to this so far. Okay, so yes is coming in before I even finish that sentence. We can relate to this stuff, can't we? Now, there are many reasons why this is, but certainly some of the mistakes that accountants make are, number one, they don't have a clear strategy for what practice success is going to look like for them. And therefore, they're just doing the same thing over and over again. They compete on price, they take on any client, they become the bottlenecks in their own practice, which prevents and stifles growth without you having to work more and more hours. They don't look after their number one client. Your number one client is your own business that should be treated as a separate entity from yourself, and give that the TLC so that that business can then look after its clients, your clients, for you. They rely on memory for customer service, which means sometimes you remember to wow a client and sometimes you don't. And when you don't, that's something that they remember. Recruit staff, more team members based on their CV alone without certain additional factors that really ought to be taken into account. That means that when you do have a team of people, they're not necessarily acting as a team, they're not stepping up, they're not making decisions, they're coming to you, they're taking up a lot of your time. And, you know, Many accountants out there, they allow their clients to just take more and more from them without charging for those additional services. And so scope creep is a massive problem for them. In addition, they don't necessarily maximise on client potential either, spotting additional opportunities where they could deliver additional work. Now, the consequences of those are that it affects us in three ways. One is time. You know, you're dealing with client demands on a regular basis. You're in client meetings with them. You're doing the work or you're double checking the work. If you've got employees, sometimes they're taking a lot of your time, bringing more problems and solutions. And that just takes up a lot of your time. When you're that busy, you run the risk of making mistakes. You know, errors can happen. You don't have time to really deliver outstanding customer service. Your great customers that you'd really love to be spending much more time with are suffering as a consequence of you not being able to do that. You don't have time to work on the business. Technology and legislation changes are always taking a lot of your time as well. So time is a major factor here, resulting in you working far more hours than you'd really like to. Income's also suffering as well. You know, you're experiencing depleting profits because your fees are being driven down or you're delivering extra services that you really aren't charging for. Cash flow can be also a challenge for you. If you do have employees and they're bringing you more problems and solutions, taking up a lot of your time, are you really getting investment on the return investment, or are they just a cost? You know, you've got bills to pay, but there are cheap accountants out there that are just undercutting you, driving your fees down there, and maybe clients are moving along to them as well. You're undergoing more and more fee pressure from existing clients, saying, well, I thought that was included. Come on, you're my accountant. Surely all of these things should be part and parcel. Get into fee disputes when you do send them that bill for the additional work you've done, and then they say, oh, come on. You're giving away much more free advice, helping them in many ways, but actually they don't appreciate the advice that you're giving them. They start to take you for granted. And for me, the most important factor of all is we should be enjoying running our business. It should be the thing that we spring out of bed for in the morning and really can't wait to be doing. But I've spoken to so many hundreds of accountants in just the past few months, and many of them saying, look, I'm just not enjoying it anymore. You know, I once upon a time had a sense of fulfillment, but I'm just not enjoying it anymore. My employees just don't seem to have the same level of care that I do. You know, I'm the one working 70, 80 hours a week. I'm getting hostility from clients because stuff's just not being turned around quick enough. The relationships at home are under strain. It's unfulfilling, it's unrewarding. I feel like I don't have a life outside of the business. And even if I do get to take a holiday, it's not relaxing. I'm dealing with texts and phone calls and emails and all of those things, or I'm just worrying about how things are going while I'm not there. In effect, your day is looking much more like this. You're just running on that same treadmill, getting nowhere, achieving very little over and above the day before. And this is the kind of feeling that we have, you know, same shit, different day. And you've kind of accepted defeat. You've convinced yourself that you don't need more income. You know, it's okay, I can get by. The hours I'm working are acceptable. 60 hours, 70 hours, 80 hours, whatever it might be for you. This is just how it is when you're in business, isn't it? You know, it's too much like hard work to change things. And maybe you feel that you're just not as good as those other accountants that are seeing the success. Perhaps you've resigned yourself feeling, well, you know, once upon a time I wanted to travel the world and see all of those amazing sights, but do you know what? I just get that it's not going to happen. My kids don't need that private education. This house is fine, we'll get by. The car will keep limping along. Working long hours is just part of the course when you're in business. And I just don't need to pursue those fun activities. Again, let me know, can you relate to this stuff? Are you living same shit, different day over and over again? Because if you are, this is also what's happening behind the scenes. You're getting older. The person in the mirror that's looking back at you is getting older and older and older. And all of those aspirations that perhaps you once had, you're starting to resign yourself to the fact that they're just not going to happen. Or maybe you keep thinking, this time next year we'll be doing those things, but just keep battling on. But it's not happening. Thank you, Marie. Do we really want to have this lifestyle? Because quite honestly, you know, a great quote from Einstein is that insanity, the definition of it is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Thinking, yeah, this, you know, the Del Boy quote, you know, this time next year we'll be millionaires. Just keep plodding on. Now, it happened in the story, but that was just fiction. We have to do things differently to get better results. But right now, it may be your business, but are you running it like it's a job? Turning up, doing a day's work, going home, turning up, doing a day's work, going home, and just carrying on treating it like it's a job. Because job stands for just over broke, doesn't it? We've been surveying the profession, asking lots of questions about their lifestyle outside of the office, the way that they're running their business in detail. Okay, and so far to date we've surveyed over 1,500 accountants, and you can see the breakdown in terms of size of firm there, with the majority of them being between the, you know, the 100,000 to 250,000. And the results aren't great for any of them, actually. In fact, the average results show okay levels in the different areas that we interviewed. Now, I don't have time to go into detail on what they are, but the way that they're running the practice, the profitability, the hours that they're working, all flow from the way that they are running different parts of their practice, and that's what we're looking at. The average across the board, even with those multi-million firms there, it's not great. We've got red and amber on there. If I just isolate the 100 to 250k range, it's even worse. Compared to the people who've been through Masterclass and they've worked with us to implement the stuff that we talk about, they're greens and maybe some ambers in most of those areas, and they actually represent a great lifestyle outside of it as well. So many of you will have seen or heard about Michael Hem. This is Michael's that he completed for us. And, you know, he's gone from being something like this to something like this, and his lifestyle has completely improved as a result. And it can for you as well. But actually, you know, going back onto that this is your life story, we've all been brainwashed throughout our lives. You know, whether it's at school, whether it's our parents or relatives or friends, or in our early apprenticeship jobs, or when we were juniors in accountancy firms. And they've just brainwashed into thinking that, oh, we can only charge so much an hour. You have to work hard and long hours. Clients have to come first no matter what. You know, any client is good GRF, gross recurring income. Sometimes we have to work with rude clients, just live with it and put up with it. You have to compete on price. You've got to undercut the competition. You know, wanting more income's greedy. Clients don't like to be sold to. I can't sell. These are all things we've been brainwashed around. I can't deliver advisory. Who am I to advise? Or I'm an imposter. You know, maybe I don't feel I've got the experience or the qualifications. I must respond even outside of hours because I've seen that email, and getting help means I've failed. These are the types of brainwashing that we've all undergone, and that's how we're running our practice as a consequence of that. Now that's the way that we are. That's why we're where we are right now. But there are actually three key threats facing the profession as well. One of them is this undervalued, one's technology, and one is HIS syndrome. So let's just address those one by one right now. Undervalued. You know, many of us feel that the situation we're in right now is as a result of this pandemic that we've been going through. We're still seeing the aftermath effects for. But the reality is that the real problem, that's not the problem. The real problem's been bubbling to the surface for many years. Just like the old adage, you know, you place a frog in a pan of hot water, it would instantly jump out because it recognises the environment is hostile. but place it in cold water and gradually heat it up. It doesn't recognise that the environment around it is changing. That's what's been happening to the profession. Because we are living in a faster and faster and faster paced changing world than ever before in history. And yet, we're not adapting quickly enough as a profession. You know, Charles Darwin said it's not the strongest or the most intelligent, it's the most responsive to change that survive. Annual accounts are a great example of this. You know, annual accounts don't make easy reading. They don't show you all the numbers that really matter. They don't show you how you compare to other industries. They don't show you the strengths and weaknesses. They don't calculate scope for improvement or support decision making. It's simply out-of-date data and that meets the needs of Companies House, HMRC, not the needs of the clients. And as a result of that, clients don't value them very much and therefore don't want to pay much for them. Annual accounts is the equivalent of just driving your car purely focused on the rear view mirror. You wouldn't drive your car purely focused on the rear view mirror. You'd take the odd look, but we want to be looking forward, don't we, not behind. And for me, you know, the accountants are just delivering that basic commodity compliance service to their clients are the equivalent of an MOT, because from a business owner's point of view, they don't value having compliance work done. They don't value having an MOT done. It's just a necessary evil that they have to have done. And therefore, if they see 3 different prices for the same service, guess what? They're going to pick the cheapest option. And that's what happens with accountants as well. The ramifications of this are that accountants end up in this price war. They're undercutting each other, which means profits are dwindling, and there's only so long you can sustain that for before you're going to have to work with a ridiculous amount more clients, which means you're going to be working harder or employing more and more team members, which means your profits are diluted. And there are more and more articles coming up just talking about the fact that, you know, in this one, Ron Baker, many of you will have heard of Ron Baker, massive in terms of the accounting profession, maybe a decade or so ago, but still very well known in the USA. But, you know, he talks about the relevancy of the core services of accountants. So that's this feeling of undervalued, you know, that's feeling of appreciation on compliance work is going down, isn't it? Technology is changing massively. We're seeing this every single day, and it's gradually impacting on the way that accountants work, isn't it? You know, if we look at the history of technology, back in 1964, Gordon Moore made the prediction that became known as Moore's Law, that computing power would increase, you know, probably every 18 months it would double in computing power, and we've seen that happen. But actually, as much as we've seen that happen until recent times, there's a new type of computer on the cusp of coming out. The predictions are 22 and 23 when the quantum computer will come out. And whereas this has been doubling in computer power every 12 to 18 months, the first iteration of the quantum computer, some say 1,000, some say 1,000,000 times, is going to be so much more powerful. Now that's going to be your cloud-based type of system, but let's face it, most of the stuff we're using now is cloud-based, so it's going to be changing in the way that it thinks, it changes in the way that it adapts, not just the speed, but its ability to think in an artificial way. So look, things are changing, times are changing, technology is improving. This article just talks about, when it refers to robots, it's talking about artificial intelligence coming up with these modern computers. The types of jobs that are at risk here are, you know, doctors and solicitors, accountants, bookkeepers, and many other professions as well, unless they change and adapt. Here's another AI type of system that's, you know, going to be released to accountants very soon. There are lots of new software, new technologies coming out. And the final one is HIS syndrome, and I'm sure many of you will know what that means. It means head in sand syndrome. Because there are many people out there that will be affected but are keeping their head in the sand thinking, this won't affect me, it won't affect me in my lifetime, my clients aren't interested in the technologies. whatever the reasons are. Or maybe your profits are dwindling, you just keep thinking, well, maybe something magical is going to happen that's going to turn it around. Something magical is not going to happen. Here's a blinding flash of the obvious. The decisions and actions that you took yesterday are a reflection of the results that you are getting today. But actually, having said all that, I want to inspire you that you can create your dream practice. Because firms that do things differently are getting radically different results. Right now, and actually COVID hasn't affected this number, I expected that it would do, but there are 5.9 million businesses in the UK, 99.9% of them SMEs. And actually one of the reasons why COVID hasn't affected this is because this has been a stable number for many, many years. But in recent years, the new businesses have started to absolutely ramp up. And even during COVID, as many businesses might have suffered and gone under, there are more businesses that have come out, seeing opportunities. Because creating a new business is easier than it ever has been in history, because we've got technology at our fingertips. We can create websites either ourselves in next to no time, or we can just outsource it very easily, create e-commerce, we can have products created or services delivered, all from our spare bedroom without very much effort. Or that's what it seems. But actually, also, this trend hasn't changed since I've been working with business owners for the past 25, 26 years as well. The survival rate of businesses has continued to, 56% of businesses die within the first 5 years, and that trend hasn't changed, sadly, in all of that time. But actually, more importantly, I've said survival here, but actually survival is the key word, isn't it? Because who wants to survive? Even the people who are surviving are probably also struggling with time. They're struggling with financial income and they're just not enjoying it. These are your general business owners. Now you can do something about this. Why you? Because I believe that accountancy is a noble profession that can make a profound difference. Not by doing this though, not by being back office crunching numbers, but actually by making a fundamental change to the way that you run your practice. Now this triangle here represents the categories of services that an accountancy practice might offer, from compliance, your bog standard bookkeeping, payroll, year-end accounts, all of those, to business services, management accounts, cash flow forecasting, growth solutions, delivering business advisory, in other words, strategic input on how people can grow and develop their business. And then wealth solutions, maybe exit planning, mergers and acquisitions. And the higher up in this triangle you can be, the much more income you'll generate, the much more profitably and enjoyable that kind of income is as well. If you're down here, the fee income isn't great per client, which means you have to work with a higher volume of clients. You're up here, you can work with fewer. Now, at the moment, most accountants that I speak to, their primary income is coming from compliance only. And I want to encourage you, and this is what we do at the masterclass, we teach you everything you need to know to make that shift into delivering advisory services. And let's face it, your rivals, your competitors are already shifting into this area, and they're making much more of a difference to their clients, and they're attracting the great quality clients who are hungry for growth and want to grow. So do you really want to get left behind? In addition to that, the technology is starting to impact already on these types of services. Management accounts, cash flow forecasting. Many business owners can produce these things themselves, can't they? From Xero or QuickBooks. They can just click the buttons and get it done. It may not be as good as if you did it for them, but they're happy with it, aren't they? And many other functions as well that once upon a time you would have charged much more for. Now let me just run a couple of scenarios past you. If you are, let's say you're generating 75k per partner, or 150k, 500k, let's settle on 250k. If your dominant service income is coming from compliance, then you've got maybe an average fee per client of 1,200, maybe more, maybe less. For that, you've got to work with 208 clients. you're probably going to have to recruit a team of people just to help with that, which means your profits are diluted through the team. Which means effectively you're running on this treadmill. Now, if you make this shift into advisory, even just for a few of those clients, then using that same starting number, you can be generating a much greater income. Many of our members at the very least are generating 7,200, and at the masterclass we teach you how to start to charge those types of fees for advisory and deliver it really effectively. For that you only have to work with 35 clients. You can either outsource the compliance work or you can have a smaller team of people just dealing with that for you, which means actually you're making much more of a difference and you get to take more relaxing holidays that aren't being interrupted, and you get to spend much more time with your families. Now you might be thinking, but Shane, I don't have the right clients for that, or I don't live in the right area, or I don't have the right team, or I don't think I could deliver that. But look, take a look on our website. We have got case study after case study after case study after case study of people just like you who had exactly the same concerns of you, that have been to masterclass, that have experienced all of the training that we give them, and they've turned their life around because they've turned their practice around and they are making much more of a difference. Advisory isn't an overnight thing, it has to start with yourself. And so we teach you all the skills to grow an incredibly successful business yourself first. The list goes on. And I want to repeat myself here. Accountancy is a noble profession that can make a profound difference and deserves to get really well rewarded for it. Not by crunching the numbers, but by making much more of a difference to their clients by having those meaningful conversations with them. Now you might be thinking, yeah, I know, I'll improve my practice one day. But what generally happens is we keep thinking I'll improve it one day, I'll improve it one day, I'll improve it one day. But it never happens. And unless we decide I'm going to improve it now, then it's always going to be this time next year, this time next year, this time next year. So look, just give me an answer in the chat box. Is it an A or is it a B? Are you going to start to improve your practice now, or is it still going to remain a someday?